Guys, we are live again. This time from the gym, we're actually doing a bit of cardio. So I'm on the spin bike right now. It's almost midnight here, and I don't traditionally do my cardio this late at night, but it's the only time to get it in today. So we're getting it in, and then I have my last meal and bedtime. So hopefully we'll pass the time here. Again, I'm not really used to doing cardio this late, so pretty tired. This is going to be one of the more laid back live calls. So let's get to some Q&A. Anything you guys want to chat about. Today's one of those days where it would have been very easy to just skip out on cardio, skip out on my training and meals, but we made it a point to get everything in. Again, it's almost midnight, and just got to fit in this last bit of cardio so I stay ahead of the game for the week. Otherwise, I'll get behind, and I don't like doing that. So, what time is it for everybody else that's here on the live? Because again, it's almost about midnight here. I figure whoever's on this call live right now is either staying up late or in a different time zone. Following your size and strength together, advice for some months. Yeah, so it's earlier for you guys, 9 p.m., 8 p.m. What is this cardio you speak of? 7:54 p.m. Yeah, so it's late for me, but everybody else not too bad. So yeah, I'm not really big on cardio. I've actually spoken about this many times in a lot of my videos, especially, if any of my clients are watching this, rarely will they be prescribed actual cardio in their programs, even if they're actually focused on fat loss. This time around for me, I'm still doing what I normally do and what I recommend for all my clients, which is obviously calorie deficit plus, hitting a specific step goal for the day. Still doing that, obviously, but in general, I'm implementing the cardio strategy to just kind of move the fat loss process along without having to go super low with my calorie intake, so soon out of the gate. I'm actually eating a really decent amount of food and still dropping weight right now. So, plus, I honestly enjoy it. Like I said, I don't really typically do it this late, but in general, if I do it during the daytime or sometimes after dinner, it's pretty enjoyable for me. Face tattoo, when, bro? I don't know about that one, but you never know. I still got time. That's for sure. So, I've been doing more trap bar stuff. I'm a big fan of the trap bar. I've recommended it for years, especially if your goal is simply just to build muscle and get stronger, right? A lot of times people have these, kind of like bodybuilding dogma. You have to do X, Y, and Z, right? And a lot of people will say, okay, if you want to build a big back, you got to use a straight bar to do deadlifts. For 90% of the population, and especially guys that never have to compete in some type of competitive sport where there's a barbell required, like powerlifting, obviously, you can get all the benefits with the trap bar. And there's a lot of additional benefits that you can get with a trap bar over a regular barbell as far as deadlifts go, especially if you want to work the quads a little bit more. Trap bar is actually a really good tool for that. I don't really use one that much anymore, just simply because I get so strong using a trap bar. It became one of those exercises where it just requires so much time and warming up that it doesn't really naturally flow into my workouts as well anymore. So from an efficiency standpoint, if I was going to do trap bar into my training or incorporate it into my training, it would be one of those things where that would kind of be the whole priority of the entire workout, which for a lot of guys is a great way to do it. But at this stage in the game for me, I'm not really looking to load up massive weights on the trap bar for the sake of it. But underrated tool for sure. You look big AF. How tall are you? So that's the funny thing. I discovered last year when I competed that I am technically 5'9.5". I always assumed I was taller than that, and I believe probably at one time somebody measured me taller than 5'9.5", like closer to 5'11". But I did ask them to measure me multiple times to verify that. Apparently I'm 5'9.5". I don't know if that means I shrunk, but 5'9.5" right now. Body weight sitting about 207. I was as high as 214 deeper into the gaining phase, and then once I got a little bit of the bloat off the food, tapered a little bit, and kind of that initial glycogen water bloat came off, I was down to about 210 right before I started the diet. So we're about 207 right now. Our trap bar rows good. I've utilized trap bar rows, periodically throughout the years. They're not my favorite. They tend to, this depends what kind of trap bar you have too. If you have the elevated handles or if you have the regular handles. But either way, especially with the elevated handles, it tends to, because of the way you're naturally pulling the bar and where the plates are in relationship to the handle, it tends to turn the row into more of a rear delt pulling exercise. So it really depends on what you're trying to focus on. If you're trying to use it for lats, I'm not a huge fan of it. Loved powerlifting style squats. Low rep heavy weight, but facing some right knee pain issue. Mild, so less weight now since some months include SSB squats additional. So yeah, listen, I love training heavy. Over the years, I've had to naturally take, things down a notch with certain movements especially, right? There was a time when I used to squat heavy 3 times per week. And you know what? At that time, that was one of the things that got me is, the biggest and strongest I could during that time. Like nothing produced the same results. But I learned quickly over the years that while one thing might produce better results in a shorter term, like 3 months, 6 months, even a year at a time, a lot of times those approaches are also not the best approach for long-term sustainable growth, right? Because for me, while it did get me big and strong, again, for short periods of time, it worked very effectively. I just got so many aches and pains so frequently. After a while, I just assumed that I was doing something wrong, but the fact is, my technique was good, the load I was using was good, but just the programming was a very poor choice for recovery long term. If you're gonna do something like I did, it's definitely something that you say you're gonna do for a short period of time, then use something that allows a little more recovery time for the joints and things like that. So, I'm glad in your case, you are swapping things out as needed, and I think a lot of people should be open to doing that, especially if certain things are causing aches and pains. Long term, you got to be very smart about that program. Again, for me, this is like year 22 of training, so like I can't afford to be making like, those types of decisions where it's impacting my ability to train properly, right? So everything I do is not only something I look at in terms of what's the best way to do it to build muscle, but what's the best way to do it so that I can keep building muscle as long as possible. All right, I want to do a quick check on heart rate here. Make sure that gotta make sure that we're still hitting at least 100, 120 beats per minute. That's about as low as I like to go here. So we're a little bit above 100 right now. It's funny because I'm actually getting out of breath speaking while doing cardio, but if I wasn't speaking, it wouldn't be as difficult. All right, so can you talk about training intensity? If deloads are important versus fatigue, I might just be using buzzwords, but I do have to force myself to rest. Should I spread my workouts more, like split legs or arm? So I'm not 100% sure what you mean by that question, but I'll try to answer it based on what I think you're saying. So in general, if your goal is to build muscle, you're going to have to train with enough intensity to stimulate growth. And that same amount of intensity that does stimulate growth also requires you to deload, because that intensity will build fatigue at a slower rate. But over time, the fatigue builds nonetheless, right? So what I would say is deloads are absolutely necessary if you're training with the intent of building muscle. Now, if you're the type of person that just trains and trains and trains and says like, oh, I never need a deload, I'll actually challenge if you're training hard enough to actually grow, right? Because I could exercise every day for months on end. But if I'm not pushing myself, I'm not going to need a deload, but I'm also not growing. So yes, if you're training productively, your intensity is going to need to be high, and you're also going to need to deload, right? So just keep that in mind. Torso and limb split is working great for me. Why do you think it's not as popular as the other splits? Great question. So the thing about torso and limbs is it's a very old program. You know, bodybuilders used it back in the 70s. There was a lot of guys, and namely, I learned about it initially from Bill Grant, which not a lot of people know who Bill Grant is, but Bill Grant was actually one of Arnold's training partners. And he made it a point to express that he, along with a lot of other guys, obviously, back in that era, tried the typical 6-day per week training split that Arnold did, right? I mean, everybody kind of used that antagonistic split 6 days per week back in the 70s. That was just like the way to train. And Bill Grant basically said, I tried keeping up with Arnold, and I just couldn't train 6 days per week. And I mean, listen, anybody even today that tries Arnold's split eventually pretty much comes to that same conclusion, right? At least for a long period of time. They might be able to hang for a few weeks, but long term, it's definitely not a sustainable approach, right? So he decided to cut his training down to 4 days per week, and he utilized the torso and limb split. And he used that training split to win his Mr. America title. And that's when I first heard about it. I heard, Bill Grant speaking about it. So number one, it's definitely an older training split that a lot of people might feel is outdated. But the thing is, a lot of people utilize these splits incorrectly. Now, I'm not saying that they did back then, obviously, but as we all know, the training volumes that they used back then were definitely on the excessive side. And the reason they were very high was because they would use them during pre-contest phases, and they would think about it just like cardio, right? So in their mind, instead of them doing cardio to burn additional calories, they would just do additional volume. Now, to utilize it in more of a growth phase, Torso and Limbs Rebuilt, the program that I put out, is simply one of the better ways to do it, is just cut down on the training volume, right? And the split is great. I pretty much call it the upper-lower bodybuilder split, right? And, I used it this last off season. It was a great way for me to train only 4 days per week. I really didn't want to train 5. And that extra day of recovery definitely helped me pack on size, no questions asked. I hadn't cut down my training to 4 days per week in years. And it was one of the best decisions I did. So the main reason I don't think a lot of people use it is just it's not very popular, number one. Not many people understand it either. And it's also one of those things where it's thought of as kind of an older approach that's outdated. But again, just because the split is set up a certain way doesn't mean you need to train with the volumes that they did back then. How many marathons have you run? Funny question, because I actually have run one marathon in my life, and I don't think I'll necessarily ever do it again. It was one of those things where it was kind of on the bucket list. I got it done, I accomplished it, not very impressively at all. But I also would say it was more of a last minute decision on my part, so I didn't really have enough time to prepare for it. But you know what? Running is definitely not my passion. Lifting and bodybuilding is my passion. But it's one of those things, kind of a cool thing to put on your bucket list and accomplish it, right? Uphill walking a couple miles per day on the treadmill works well for me. Yeah, I'm a huge fan of walking to get cardio and steps in. At home, I have a walking pad, and I also have a spin bike, so I tend to use my walking pad for just getting additional steps in. So right now I'm hitting 10,000 steps per day. Sometimes I go a little bit over it, but that's the goal. And then I throw in about 25 minutes of low intensity, steady state cardio on the bike. I do about 25 minutes of that with my heart rate around 100, 120 beats per minute. Pete, I gotta say, for me, when viewing on mobile, live streams are 10 times better in landscape mode. Your live stream Q&As are still awesome. I'm just saying, yeah, I am really honestly just winging all of these lives, to be totally honest with you. So I'm not one of these guys that really pays attention too much to what other people are doing on social media. I mean, I know I really should, just to get better ideas of how to do things better for you guys so that it's more enjoyable on your ends. But even like training, I see things, I test them out, and then I kind of learn as I go. And based on what type of results I'm getting, I kind of tweak things as I go. So doing some of these lives on my phone, doing some of them on my laptop. So I'm just experimenting with different formats, but definitely keep leaving your feedback here because it's good for me to know what the experience is like for you guys and what you guys enjoy, because I'm always happy to tailor these things so there's more enjoyable on your part as well. Paulie says, what's up from Long Island, bro? What part of Long Island, man? 5'9" and 207 is no joke at all. My best has been 5'11" at 220. It was a torment to get there. Yeah, you know what's funny, because I pretty much sit around, and this is like where I've always sat for years, between 190 and 200 pounds. But realistically closer to like 190. For me, training as long as I've trained, and like when I bulk, like I push calories pretty hard. My body is just one that doesn't like being much over 200 pounds. And it's always been a huge, huge challenge. Like literally the last year and a half has really been the only time I've been able to keep my body weight consistently over the 200 pound mark. And it's one of those things where, a lot of people can go up and down to a certain weight. My body has always naturally tried to find like homeostasis around that like 190, 195 pound mark. So for me, it was very difficult to get over the 200 mark. So right now, my main goal, and this was the same thing last year, I have to be very diligent with my cardio and my diet to make sure that when I drop weight, especially in the initial phases, the body weight doesn't come off too quickly, because my body has a tendency to just drop very quickly till it gets to that point where it's happy. And like for me, it's always been like 190, 195. This last year and a half, I really focused on trying to just kind of reestablish a new body fat or body weight set point for me. And I think I've been able to do that pretty well, where my new kind of cruising weight is around between 200, 210 pounds, like 205, 210 is really good. Since I've been a kid, I've always wanted to be like 220, 230 plus. I really don't think that's in the cards for me, but you never know, right? But I'm really happy to be sitting here at 205, 210, even at like maintenance or even in a slight deficit. So, yeah, it's the biggest I've been, the heaviest I've been, the strongest I've ever been. So, really happy with it for sure. Still always look at myself in the mirror and I say, you know what? Every time I add weight, I don't see where it goes, but the scale doesn't lie, right? It's going somewhere, and I don't see additional body fat either. What are we up to time-wise here? Got about 3 more minutes. All right. Thoughts on heavy dumbbell farmer carries. A lot of people like this for trap work, and I think it's a good exercise for, overall strength development as well. But for bodybuilding specific training, I think there's many better ways to train the traps, train the forearms, train the upper back. I don't think there's anything wrong with it. I think it's a great exercise, but it's one of those things where I think you can get it done more efficiently with more traditional trap training, shrug training, forearm training, things like that. What is a better stimulus to fatigue ratio? Great question. I don't know what you're asking yet, but I like the idea, so let's go with this. One set with 0 RAR or 2 sets with 1 RAR. Now, to answer this without knowing the exercise would be very difficult to give you an honest answer because it's going to be exercise specific. So I'll answer it with an example. So if we're talking specifically a heavy compound lift, I'm actually going to go for 1 set at 0 RAR. So if I'm doing, like, let's say an incline barbell press, I much rather take that set all the way to 0 RAR, rack it, and that be my one hard set for that movement. Now, something like a dumbbell curl, or like let's even go even further, like a dumbbell lateral raise. The one set, even if it's the 0 RAR, is not going to produce a very great stimulus, and it's also not going to produce a ton of fatigue. So I much rather have somebody do 2 sets of that with 1 IRR, because realistically, those movements, most people never train them to failure. It's very difficult to actually, get your side delts to reach failure on a lateral raise. Much easier for the upper pecs to reach failure on an incline press. So it's going to be more exercise specific is that answer, but they're very close in stimulus to fatigue ratio. Like, it's almost negligible, the difference. But if we're talking exercise specifically, that's when one's going to be a better tool than the other. All right, we got 30 seconds left of cardio, but I'll try to answer a couple of these before we wrap it up. It's getting late over here, guys. Hey, I used to watch you a lot. I gotta be honest, I've been slacking off for so long. I've taken to guitar, but let my fitness go bad. Have you ever gone through a period like this? So listen, I've been doing this since I'm 14 years old. I'm 36 now. When I started doing this, I was in high school, right? I have a family now. I have a business to run. I got a lot of things going on day to day. And the truth is, no matter how much I love this, there are days, there are times, there are weeks, there are periods of time in my life where it becomes very difficult to get it in. But I will tell you this, during those times, I don't stop completely, but there will be times when just life kind of forces me to not put my goals aside, but make training and dieting fit my lifestyle based on the season that I'm in. So, like, especially when my son was first born, obviously had the same passion for training, wanted to get in the gym, wanted to stay as in shape as possible. But during that time, I didn't have the luxury of training 5 days per week, 2 hours at a time, right? So for those few months, my training was more sporadic. It was more when I could get to the gym. Dieting, obviously I wasn't on an aggressive cut or bulk or anything like that. It was like more maintenance. So for me, sure, I've had periods of time when I had to, let my training and diet kind of take a little back seat to life, but I never cut it out completely. And I've never cut it out completely since 14 years old. Because number one, it's a passion for me. I love it. Like, when I'm not able to train, that actually makes me like depressed. Like, for me, it's not being able to do the one thing that I enjoy doing the most. So I'm always going to find a way to fit it in, right? But also, I got to be realistic, and I got to, adapt to my life at that time and understand that there's periods of time when, training and dieting are going to be easier to fit in, and there's times where it's going to be more difficult, right? Like, perfect example right now, I'm getting in my cardio right now. At the end of the day, I'm usually in bed for about an hour already, and I'm doing it now. And I'm not saying that to say like that's hardcore or anything. I'm just saying there's times when it's a bit more difficult and you got to kind of just, go through it, whether it's easy or not. But there's plenty of times where you can push harder, given the fact that you got more time, better lifestyle to accommodate it. And there's other times where it's more difficult and you say, realistically, I could pull back a little bit and things aren't going to suffer. Because I mean, listen, it's very easy to maintain. To change, to put on muscle, to burn body fat, that's very difficult. That requires a lot of effort. That requires a lot of time and consistency. But to maintain requires very little in comparison, right? Like I could realistically go to the gym 2 times per week right now and maintain all my muscle mass. But it took years and years of me going to the gym 4 or 5 days per week to put it on, right? So maintenance is not as difficult. So what I would say is during those times, focus on maintenance, but at the same time, don't stop completely. Pete, I'm using your 5-day masking program, but normal progressive style, 1 to 2 sets per exercise to failure instead of 5 sets. Will that work? So I've utilized both approaches, and if you've actually gotten my old school masking system, you'll see that I actually programmed in more lower volume, pretty much in line with what you're doing, 1 to 2 sets per exercise to failure instead of the 5 sets. And I'll be honest with you, I grew the most earlier on in my training following more of that 5 set approach, more of that 5x5 approach, which is why it's in there. But the old school masking system, I also lowered the volume a bit as well. And both approaches work very well because it's really the overall volume throughout the program that's most important rather than the specific sets per exercise and the specific sets for body part in the one session. What type of volume are you doing over the course of the whole program, right? Especially from a recovery standpoint. So with that being said, the way you're doing it, 1 to 2 sets to failure, it's absolutely a great way to do it. Like I said, if you get my old school masking system, you'll see specifically the 1 to 2 sets programmed in there as well. So I utilize it that way as well too. When's the last time you had a beer? Great question. I don't regularly drink alcohol, and I really don't drink beer. I'm trying to think, to be honest with you. It's been that long. I'm also trying to think of the last alcoholic beverage I had. I think me and my wife had. I had a drink. Yes, it wasn't beer. I had a drink on my birthday was the last time. So in about 4 months, I had one drink. Prior to that, it was probably my birthday the previous year. So, alcohol is not really something that fits into my lifestyle. And luckily for me, it was never really one of the things that I had to quote unquote give up to reach my fitness goals. It was just never really a priority for me. All right. I'm going to answer like 2 more questions here, and then I got to eat and go to sleep because it's getting late. But really quickly, what do I think about peptides? Can you speak on them? So I've touched on this before, and it's one of the topics where I don't really speak about it on it too much. Not because I don't want to, but because the internet's so flooded with misinformation about it that I think a lot of people looking for the answer to a question like that are already influenced by what other people are saying, and it becomes very difficult to speak about things like that, very logically. So what I do say on that topic, because I work with many clients who are either utilizing them already, or interested in utilizing them in their programs to actually help them with their goals. Especially a lot of guys that are older, right? Like I have a ton of clients that are, 50 plus that are either on TRT or already using TRT plus peptides. They work with clinics. And what I will say on them is that they are kind of the new hype in bodybuilding and fitness, right? Like all these fitness influencers are talking about how amazing they are. And the truth is, plenty of them actually, do some amazing things, especially, some of these that are very good for fat loss, and health, especially for people that are overweight. So I definitely think they have their application, but I think that also a lot of them are extremely overhyped. And I'd be completely lying if I spoke about them the same way a lot of these other people speak about them, because the fact of the matter is they're blowing their benefits out of proportion because they're also selling them, right? So if a client is utilizing something or they're asking me my opinion on it because they're thinking about adding it to their program, if it makes sense, I'm not opposed to it. But a lot of these, a lot of these peptides that people talk about now, they're beneficial, don't get me wrong, but they're also overselling them to you, a lot of them. And I mean that there's probably like 3 or 4 that are spoken about pretty often that are definitely, beneficial given specific cases, but not in the context that a lot of people are using them. Like it's actually just crazy to me how many people are just jumping on peptides that either don't even work out or just started working out and they think they're going to get this like life-changing benefit from them. They're really one of those things where if you have everything in place already, they really are like icing on the cake, right? But I've yet to see somebody step on the Olympia stage because they used peptides and they were completely natural before, right? Like they're not that type of compound that a lot of people make them out to be. Like people make them out to be like, you don't need to work out, just take these peptides, use my discount code, and you're gonna be, transforming in 6 weeks. It doesn't work like that, unfortunately. We're not at that stage in science yet where we have anything like that available. All right, 2 more questions, then I gotta go. Is steps per day a better approach than dedicated cardio if I don't like doing cardio in the gym? Yeah, so if your goal is specifically fat loss, all you need is steps and calorie deficit. That's literally it. Every single bodybuilding competition I've done, and actually every client of mine that I've prepped for a bodybuilding show, we've actually kept cardio completely out and we've just focused on steps and calorie deficit. So for fat loss specifically, cardio is not needed, especially if you don't like it. Now, where cardio comes into play is it's a tool to expend more calories, yes, but also it's, one of the best ways to get in, the health benefits of the actual cardio itself, because steps and diet can only go so far in that department. But getting your heart rate up to, a steady, low intensity cardio rate will have the health benefits as well. Personally, I'm mixing them right now, so I'm doing my cardio because I'm getting the health benefits of it, but I am in a diet phase right now. So it's just helping me push my calorie expenditure along a little bit more, but I can easily just diet a bit harder or do more steps. So right now I'm trying to keep the calories as high as possible, and I don't really have a lifestyle that allows me to get as many steps as I used to when I was younger. So for me, even hitting 10,000 steps requires me to kind of, put in some work to get there. So the cardio just fits in very well with that. It's a tool, but it's not a requirement at all. Is training to failure necessary on every set in a workout? No. So the truth is, number one, it's not necessary on every set in a workout, and failure training is not necessary at all to maximize growth. Really, to get all the results that you want, generally between 0 reps in reserve, which a lot of people think is failure, and 1 rep in reserve is all you really need to do. So 0 reps in reserve is pretty much where I train most of the time. And what that means is you rack the bar when you can no longer complete another rep. You don't go for another rep. And that's the thing a lot of people don't realize, because a lot of people say, oh, I took this set to failure, but they didn't actually fail during the rep. So what they did was 0 reps in reserve. And that's actually what I recommend. I don't recommend people push to failure. I've trained for years on free weight movements with no spotter. The only way you're actually going to reach failure on a free weight barbell press or something of that nature, if you're actually going to reach failure, is having a spotter either grab that bar or assist you in a rep. So if you're training by yourself, if you have the power rack set up and you have catchers there, sure, you could train to failure, but realistically, you're training to 0 reps in reserve if you're able to rack that bar yourself. So I don't recommend anybody push to missing reps. I don't ever recommend people attempt reps that they can't complete. So no, not required at all. Honestly, not recommended either. So does your 5-day mass gain program build the old school frame? Yeah, absolutely. So the biggest thing, especially with old school bodybuilders, that's not emphasized today at all. I mean, you talk to any bodybuilding coach today about what body parts they emphasize, it's very different than what old school bodybuilders did. And I think that's the biggest difference in what an old school physique looks like in most bodybuilders today. Most bodybuilders and even guys that don't compete, that just follow kind of bodybuilding style training, they build that like what I like to call the refrigerator physique, right? Like they have this huge, massive torso, but their shoulders and arms are just tiny, right? They just look thick everywhere. And if you guys follow competitive bodybuilding, if you look at guys on stage now, even not even at the pro stage, but like at like national level stages, the amount of muscle mass that they have on their torso and their legs in proportion to anything else is insane. Like huge legs, huge backs, you know, good chest, but in general, like not this nice shape to the shoulders, the arms, that, you know, nice taper. It's just mass in all the bigger body parts. And what do most people do today? They focus on something like a push-pull leg split, which is not a bad split, especially if those body parts are developed already. Like for me, a push-pull leg split's a great way to train because I don't need to bring up my arms. You know, like they're literally just there at the end of the workout because it's more maintenance work. I'd rather bring up my chest and my back. But a lot of guys are kind of leading from the front with that today, and they're building massive chest, massive back, massive legs, which again, those are important body parts to build, right? Very important. But that's really the difference between, you know, you take a 195-pound physique from 1970 and a 195-pound physique today. Obviously, the body fat percentage, if it's a contest lean, 190 pounds is different. But if you just look at where that muscle mass is distributed, it's very different now than where it was back then. And that's why that aesthetic is not really there anymore. Like arms really need to be a priority if you want to build an aesthetic physique. Like it just, I don't understand why anybody wouldn't prioritize them. A lot of people think that they are with their training today, but just seeing the way most people program their training today, a lot of people are just not properly training the body parts that really make for an aesthetic physique. So like, if you need muscle mass everywhere, obviously train with a program that brings everything up, but don't neglect things like the arms, you know, the traps, the rear delts, the side delts, you know, the lat sweep. It's not just about adding muscle everywhere. I mean, if your goal is to be the most competitive bodybuilder you can be in the open bodybuilding stage right now, sure, focus on adding mass everywhere. But if you're trying to have more of an aesthetic physique, your training program should represent that. And that's pretty much why I laid out the 5-day mass gain program the way I did. Something I did for myself when I first started training. And, you know, I had aspirations of competing, but I also looked at the guys in the 70s as the inspiration. So I wanted to build a physique like them. That's why that program was structured the way it was. So yes, absolutely. If you follow that program, the split is pretty much laid out to prioritize those body parts in the specific order and detail that you need to make those muscles grow. So, all right, but that's all we got time for today. Enjoyed this live. As always, you guys are always bringing great questions. So once again, I will be doing these regularly. So if I didn't get to your question or if you want to just join on the next live, be on the lookout. I tend to do these kind of sporadically. It's funny because I scheduled one of them and got pretty much the same amount of views on them as when I do them at any given time. So I might just continue to do so. But as always, guys, leave your feedback. Let me know what you guys like, what you don't like, what you want to see more of. And as always, if you guys are interested in working with me directly, I am taking on new clients. So you guys can reach me at my email or my website. So my website has my coaching programs, my training programs, my ebooks. That's www.oldschoolmassgain.com. If you want to email me directly, if you want to talk about your goals, training, or you want to work one-on-one with me, you can just email me. It's peter@oldschoolmassgain.com. So guys can reach me there. Obviously, if you follow me on Instagram, my handle is @jacked, JAKKED. Guys, connect with me whenever you guys want. If you guys need help, I'm here to help as always. But that's all I got time for tonight. I'll see you guys on the next live.